Hi everyone, you learned about constants, so in this lesson I'm going to give you 5 exercises where you'll need to use them. You should learn to recognize when to use variables and when to use constants. We'll practice that in this lesson and in the next few lessons as well. First, please pause the video and try to solve all of these exercises on your own. Only after that should you watch how I solve them. It's completely fine if you solve an exercise differently from me or can't solve it at all. The important thing is to study my code afterward so you can understand the solution and improve your knowledge. Reading someone else's code is useful, even if you're sure your own code is correct. You might find mistakes in someone else's code, or you might discover a better, cleaner, or simply more efficient way to solve the problem. Let's get started. Exercise 1. You went to the cinema and bought a ticket for a movie. The ticket contains the hall number, row number, and seat number. These values will not change during the movie, so store them in constants. Also create a regular Boolean variable that shows whether the ticket has been checked by an employee. At first, the ticket has not been checked yet. Print all the ticket's information to the screen. Then imagine that an employee checks your ticket. Change the corresponding variable and print the information again. Example of the first output: hall 4, row 7, seat 12, ticket checked 0. Okay, so first we need to figure out which values won't change, meaning which ones should be constants. These are the hall number, the row number, and the seat number, so I create 3 constants. Notice that I currently follow a rule of naming constants using Pascal case, meaning that every word starts with a capital letter. At the same time, I name variables using camel case, so that these 2 constructs are easy to tell apart in the code. You can name them however you want, but I recommend choosing one naming style for constants and another one for variables. I also decided to declare these 3 constants on the same line because they all have the same type and are semantically related. Then we have the isTicketChecked variable, which is going to change. Next, I print all of my data, then change the value of the variable and print everything again. Let's run the program and take a look at the output. Exercise 2. A video game character starts level with a maximum of 100 health points and can carry no more than 30 bullets. These limits do not change during the level, so store them in constants. Also create regular variables for the character's current health and current amount of ammunition. At the beginning, both values are equal to their maximum values. First, print the character's current state: health 100 out of 100, ammo 30 out of 30. Then imagine that the character takes damage and fires several shots. Change only the current values and print the character's state again, like this: health 65 out of 100 and ammo is 17 out of 30. You may have already noticed a pattern. In almost every exercise, we first create some data, print it to the screen, then change it and print it again. This might start to feel a little repetitive or at this point, but that's only because our programs aren't interactive yet, meaning that they communicate with the user. We haven't learned how to enter information from the keyboard and store it in our variables yet, but we will, and the exercises will become much more interesting. Trust me, with every new lesson, you'll be able to do more and more varied exercises. For now, if you're getting bored, just hang in there until we get to the lesson about user input. Now, let's look at the exercise itself. We have 2 values that shouldn't change: max health and max ammo. Here, I decided to declare them on separate lines because I don't think they're closely related semantically. Next, I create 2 variables whose initial values are equal to our constants, but their values will change over time. I print the current health and ammo compared to their maximum values, then decrease the variables and print everything again. Let's run the program. Exercise 3. You're developing a small program and are currently testing version 2.4b, where B means beta. This version number shouldn't accidentally change while the program is running, so store each part of it in a constant. The program also stores the number of times it has been launched. This value, unlike the version number, can change. Create the necessary constants and variable. At first, the program has been launched 5 times. So we need to see the output like this. Version 2.4b launches 5. Then change the number of launches to 6 and print the information again. The program version must remain unchanged. Here we have 3 constants related to the version number, as well as a variable that will change over time. I print the version information first, and then the number of times the program has been launched. I could have printed the entire version on a single line, but on my laptop, that line of code would be too long. It would go beyond the edge of the editor. I tried to write my code so that everything fits nicely within the editor. Next, we change the variable and print all the information again. Let's run the program. Exercise 4. A game has 3 difficulty levels. On easy difficulty, the player starts with 5 lives. On normal difficulty, the player starts with 3 lives. On hard difficulty, the player starts with only 1 life. The starting number of lives for each difficulty level is fixed, so store these values in constants. Create a regular variable for the player's current number of lives. Imagine that the player first chooses normal difficulty. Assign the value of the corresponding constant to the variable and print current lives is are 3. Then the player decides to restart the game on hard difficulty. Assign the value of another constant to the same variable and print it again, current lives 1. Alright, let's figure out which values should be constants. There are 3 of them and they're semantically related, so I declare them all on the same line. However, if that line were too long, I would declare each constant on a separate line. Next, we create a variable with the initial value of 3 and print its value. Then we change its value to 1 and print it again. Let's run the program. Exercise 5. You arrived at a hotel and received a room. Your room can have a maximum of 4 guests and is located on the 7th floor. These values do not change for your room, so store them in constants. Currently, 2 people are staying in the room and the Do Not Disturb sign is turned on. Create regular variables for the current number of guests and the state of the sign. So the output is like this. Floor 7, guests 2 out of 4, and Do Not Disturb 1. It means true. Later, one more person joins you, and you turn off the Do Not Disturb sign. Change only the regular variables and print the room information again, like this. Floor 7, guest 3 out of 4, and Do Not Disturb is 0, means false. We have 2 constants and 2 variables. The maximum number of guests shouldn't change, and neither should the floor number, so these values should be constants. The number of guests can change, and so can the Do Not Disturb sign. Take a look at the name of the floor constant. Do you think its name clearly describes what it represents? That's an interesting question because we can ask the exact same thing about the guest variable. In programming, you'll often see short variable names that don't fully describe what they store. After all, what we're actually storing here is the floor number. So floor number would be more precise. The same goes for guests. Number of guests would be more descriptive, but in small blocks of code where we don't have much data, it's often perfectly fine to keep things simple like we're doing here. If we had a block of code with, for example, 5 different variables containing the word guest, then a variable simply called guest might not be specific enough to tell us exactly what value it stores. But that's not the case here, so we'll leave everything as it is. The variables are created, so now we print everything to the screen, change the variables, and print everything again. Nothing complicated. Let's run the program. Okay, that's it for this lesson. I hope you worked through these exercises with me and enjoyed them. I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.